I've got prepared remarks, and then I'd love to have a give and take. I would like to have a lot more fun today than just lecturing to you all. Being in your chair many years ago, being lectured to is certainly no fun. I don't particularly care to do that. Last week was a blast. I don't know if you realize who you had last week, the importance, but Chris Kaminski is a personal friend of mine, and we've been in the business for a long time, as well as Pat Wilson. Pat has been engaged with economic development for, as he said, over 10 years. And then Chris actually led our efforts with economic development of starting the #1 state in which to do business. And both those guys work extremely well together. But Chris is the #2 guy at Georgia Power, and he handles the day-to-day oversight of Vogtle. And what you're hearing a lot of now is the coal ash ponds with our coal-fired plants, and with the federal government telling Georgia Power, this is how you're to permit, this is how to operate your coal-fired plants back in late 60s, early 70s when they were constructed, only now to come back and say, well, you shouldn't have done it this way. Oh yeah, we're going to hold you liable. We need you to change that. Chris is managing the day-to-day activities of that. So it's a big deal, so those two guys. Before I get off your guest speakers, let me tell you about who you got next week. Next week is Teresa McCartney. Miss McCartney was a partner of mine in the day-to-day activities of the state government and implementing state government as the CFO and the OPB director. Put it lightly, she had the checkbook for the state of Georgia. And the governor might have signed the check, but Teresa had the check. And so she's going to come. She's with the Regents now at the central office. She's going to come talk to you about how the state manages its money, how do we invest our money, how do we cash flow. A side note, when we first got into office, we had $116 million, which is enough to manage state government for 3 days. The OPB director came to me and said, here's our outflow of money, and I need you to sign off on this on behalf of the governor. And I went to the governor. I said, this is what we're going to need to sign off on. And I'm pale-faced a lot of times. Unless I'm mad, then I don't hide it well. I'm pretty red-faced. But he said, what's wrong? And I said, well, we're running the state as a business. I said, we have to wait for cash to come in before we can allow cash to go out. Now just think about that. Back in 2011, the state of Georgia did not have enough money to pay its bills until we had enough money from cash coming in. So a lot of great things are going to come from Teresa next week, so take the time to ask that. And then going into April, you've got Governor Roy Barnes and Governor Deal both together telling some great stories. And then Speaker Ralston, Terry, Chairman of the House, Terry England, Senator Butch Miller be in the middle of the budget process when they're coming to talk to you as well. So you got some great speakers ahead. Let's say I'm a filler. So having said that, I want to talk to you a little bit about politics, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about where we are and when looking at the state government, specifically the governor's office, and what does the governor's office consist of? How is it managed? What does it do on a day-to-day basis? Because it literally evolves by the hour. Let's talk about politics real quick and a campaign. And before we get into the state politics and local politics, I'm sort of a geek of politics when it comes to watching it unfold. Now, I want to mention something to see if y'all kind of saw it unfold 2 weeks ago with the Democratic Party. At the presidential level, after Joe Biden, the vice president, won the South Carolina primary, did y'all see the Democrat establishment engage? Did you see Rahm Emanuel, who is chief of staff to President Obama, work with President Obama and orchestrate the establishment engaging and deliver Super Tuesday for Vice President Biden? It was masterful. It's not my party. I'm on the other side, but watching that unfold was masterful because 49% of the people that voted on Super Tuesday, the Democratic primary, did so because they were convinced the only person they wanted to vote for was to what? Beat Donald Trump. The ding was not it. It was not timing. It was a perfect timing, though. 49% of the people that voted on Super Tuesday were convinced that the person they voted for was the best person to beat Donald Trump. It goes totally against what the Bernie Sanders movement was. It played right into the hands of the establishment, with President Obama personally calling the 3 candidates that were in the race, lost in South Carolina, took their entire campaigns and moved them into Biden. The momentum coming out of South Carolina and into Super Tuesday by that establishment, and have that telegraphed by Rahm Emanuel and President Obama, was just a masterful moment. And now Bernie Sanders is on the sideline trying to get back in the game. He won't. It's over. In my opinion, I'm going to say some very hard things, but it's over. Bernie's not getting back in the game. I hate to say it. He's going to have a say-so in the Democratic convention. He may get to speak one night. That's what he's negotiating for right now. He's got a few delegates. He's going to get to speak one night, but it's over for him. Biden's the man. He's going to be the Democratic nominee. Now, from our side, from our point of view, what does this mean? We were sitting back going, oh yeah, bring it on, Bernie, because we're going to get reelected. This is going to be great for Georgia. I don't know if you saw Senator Kelly Loeffler's ads. They changed after about 2 or 3 weeks. They all of a sudden used the word socialist. Did anybody see that? Did anybody pick up on that? When you started using the word socialist, that's when Bernie Sanders started peaking in the polls. When he started peaking and getting out in front of Biden, and all of a sudden we started labeling him as a socialist. That started playing so well in the battleground states like Georgia. Loeffler took an aggressive approach on that. And so that started to play out. When that started to play out in not only Georgia but other battleground states, that's when the Democratic establishment stepped in. I get excited about that. That's just a little geekish. But that played out and was just really fun to watch from the sidelines, and being from where former Governor Deal and I are now, looking in after spending 17 years in Washington and seeing a lot of things unfold up there, and how the environment is in Washington now. It's very septic, toxic in terms of the politics. And when Governor Deal first got to Washington, you actually were able to carry on a conversation across the aisle. You actually were able to work across the aisle for the betterment of the American people. Now you can have a conversation, but in order to get things done, your party, your leadership seems that that's frowned upon. So that's unfortunate, and maybe that'll change one day, but right now that seems to be the message coming out of Washington. So you want to run for office. You want to start a campaign. What's the first thing you need?
Money.
Close.
Voter base.
Mayor Bloomberg told us that's not true.
I said voter base, your constituents.
Absolutely. You got to have a base. You got to have a base to run. In 2009, 2009, May 1st, when Governor Deal decided to run for governor. And people said, how can you run for governor? You're a congressman, you're out of touch. How in the world can you run for a state office? Yes, you've got 12 years in state senate, but how can you do this? Let me tell you how he did it, because it's very simple. He had a base. He had a 9th congressional district, of which he represented for 17 years. The 9th congressional district over 17 years actually ran from South Carolina to Alabama, northward. We had a great base. That base made up of almost 40% of the primary in the 2010 gubernatorial primary. 68% of the Republican primary in 2010 was determined by I-20 geographically northward. So all we had to do was campaign in between the 9th district boundary and I-20. Now, I spent a lot of pale-faced nights arguing with Miss Deal about why we should not go below I-20. And I lost those arguments, but nevertheless, politically, that was our frame, because I knew we had a base. Now, during the primary runoff, when we were 4th, 3rd, and we had to get number 2 in the primary, the 9th district, that base, delivered the gubernatorial primary to get us in the 2nd slot in order to put us in the primary runoff. So you're exactly right, a base. Next, what's the next thing you have to have in order to run a successful campaign? A message. You've got to have You got to have a reason to run. Anybody can run for office. Bernie Sanders taught us that. Warren taught us that. I can pick on some Republicans too. I mean, we got some. Never mind. We got some people, that with agendas. But anybody can have a message. But you got to have a message that resonates. You got to have something that the voters of the citizens, the residents of which you're running for, listen to, care about. What can you do for them? What can you do to make their lives better than what it is currently today? They don't necessarily want a handout. They want to know what can you do. What can you do to get government out of the way? What can you do to get government less regulatory? How can you cut taxes? How can you provide a better education system for our K through 12 than what we currently have now? How can you reform hope to make it solvent for the next generation? Some of these issues that you need to determine in a message, you do that how? Polling. Avery said y'all listened to the governor on Monday. So I know he covered these. Polling. Polling's the number one way to find out. No one likes talking to a pollster. They call your cell phone. They call you. I know y'all don't know what a landline was, but when I was growing up, we had these things called a telephone at home. It was connected to the wall. These pollsters would call all the time during supper too. So we had a pollster would call you. You get a message. You find out what's important to the district, the state that you're running for. That's how you determine your message. The next thing you need to run a successful campaign. Money. Without money, no traction. You could have the best message, you could have a base, but if you can't get your message out with money, you might as well just give it up. Stick to whatever you're doing because you're not going to be heard. The only name ID you're going to get is whatever you use to qualify for, and the Secretary of State on the ballot of which you're going to go in and be on the ballot. Everybody's going to vote for and go, who is this? I've never heard this person's name before. Where do you find money? Interest groups who associate with you. Donors of influential means who feel that your campaign's either going to help their business, either by getting out of their way, assist their business in terms of promoting what they're doing in trade abroad, in other states, any sort of expansion. Those who agree with your campaign message and those who believe in you, that you will be on the phone or you will be shaking their hand asking them for $1,000, $2,000, $50, $10, whatever. Here again, Senator Sanders did it right. He's got $25 million monthly coming in from donors of $100 or less who've pledged monthly to give $100. $25 million a month across the nation. That's a huge deal of $100 donors or less. Those are the people you're going to ask for. Those are your money groups. How do you do that? Being a candidate. Any idea? Dialing for dollars. You got to have a professional person. You don't have to, but you need to have a professional person helping you. Put a list together, those who've donated prior, so you're not spinning your wheels of dialing people who have no interest in taking your calls, who have donated candidates before. You have to have someone putting together events or receptions. I'd call them cattle calls. You got drinks and a few odds, knickknacks where people are coming in. They're bringing a check. They want to shake your hand. They want you to take their check and spend 5 or 10 minutes with them. It's just a cattle call, and you're going to get to visit with them shortly. They're going to get to donate to your campaign. You're going to build a relationship of being able to donate and receive, etc. So we've got base, message, money. We've got a successful mixture, right? What about timing? Timing is everything in politics. Without timing, then everything's for naught. So you might have all these ingredients, but without timing, then we don't have anything. So you have to take into account all of what I've said, and it might not be the right time for you to run personally. It might not be the right time with more than one person running. The incumbent might be running. It might not be an open seat. The incumbent may be in trouble. may have made some bad votes. The open seat may have someone stronger, more influential in terms of financial means. Timing has a lot of factors that are involved. And finally, there's an X factor. You always have to plan for the unexpected when running a campaign. Right now, if I'm President Trump, what's the X factor involved with him? The coronavirus. The coronavirus.
The economy?
The economy, but what's controlling the economy? Talking about the tail that wags the dog. Coronavirus is, COVID-19 is controlling everything that we are doing right now. There are people right now meeting on whether or not you should stay in school for the remainder of 45 days or we should do this online. So COVID-19 is controlling everything from the national, the state, and the federal level down. And it's something that is driving President Trump absolutely bonkers. Why? He can't control it. And so when you can't control it, you have to put the best parameters in place with your people that you trust, that are experienced, that have the best staff, the best people around them to do what we do best. And that's manage, protect, and implement strategies and precautions to protect the American public. So the X factor over the next 5 to 8 months here, Georgia, Dahlonega, nationwide, globally, is going to be the coronavirus. And Donald Trump will be reelected or elected based on the coronavirus. You could see a financial aid package that will mirror what we did in 2008 back during the first recession when the financial market crisis hit. You could see that coming. Well, they just did an $8.5 billion stimulus package just to cover the cost of Corona that is being sent to the president now. So he's negotiating now with Congress on a financial aid stimulus package just to cover what's happened with Corona over the past 2 months. It's going to take 6 to 8 months just to have the first possibility of a virus protection. And that's not even going through the protocols of the next 6 to 8 months to see if any kind of serum works. So the corona will dictate whether or not President Trump is going to be reelected or elected, in my opinion. And that's the X factor involved. That's huge. Finally, I would tell you, when running a campaign, I would talk a lot about from a campaign manager standpoint to a candidate standpoint, and it's really it's something that can't elect you, but it certainly can defeat you. And without standing in front of a mirror in your bathroom, without practicing with someone that you know and trust, is something that needs your full attention, and that's media. Media needs to have the attention of the candidate and the candidate staff. The worst mistake you can do with a reporter is what? In my opinion. In addition to, it just sends me around the bend. Run. Those candidates that run from the media, or the staffer likes to put their hand up and block the camera, don't do that. I mean, come on. Stand up and take the question. Practice about the question. Learn to give an answer back to the question that you've practiced without answering his or her question. You don't have to answer the question. You have to respond. Otherwise, they're going to put something on the air that you failed to respond. So respond without answering the question. And that takes practice. Your professors, it's a skill set. And it takes years and years to do. But answer the question without answering their question. Answer on your terms what you want to be repeated. A lot of times, and we'll talk about this when I get to the governor's office. A lot of times in the governor's office, what we had to become accustomed to coming out of Congress was I had to become accustomed to what's called the Open Records Act. And the Open Records Act is the governor and I had his schedule, my schedule, open record every week. So we had reporters come and sit in my conference room and go through our schedule from you name it, because unfortunately I had to become accustomed to putting everything on my schedule that in order to be able to stay on track. And so you have reporters that, why are you doing this, this, and this, and this? And you just become accustomed to that. So finally, I started playing the game with them. So I started putting things on my schedule that I wanted the press to report in the article. So I started having people write emails to me that I wanted in the article. So answer the question the way you want the article to be read as a candidate. So just think about that for a minute. If whatever the topic is, that's how you answer the question. Don't answer the question the way that they want you to answer, because trust me, they're going to edit your answer and put it in the article the way that they want it. And let me give you a perfect example. Yesterday, there was a hearing, and the hearing was on, it's a bill moving through the House, and it's on corners being allowed to go into nursing homes. And if there's a death that has occurred, the nursing home is required by law to report the death. The bill says that the coroner must be notified of the death when it occurs. The Nursing Home Association in the hearing said, we have concerns about the training requirements of the coroners in the state of Georgia, because the requirements for a coroner in the state of Georgia have a high school education. That's about it. So they're saying if you're going to say that there was foul play or misconduct, there should be additional training requirements. Right? Wrong? So that's what the Georgia Healthcare Association guy stood up and said. So the article comes out in today's AJC, says, Nursing Home Association opposes legislation. That's not what he said. He said we think that we ought to move the legislation forward. We just need to have additional requirements for the coroner. So my point is, they're going to spin it the way they want to spin it. Earned media is earned media. You just need to dig into it and find out what you want, how you want to say it, in order to be how you want it to be read by your voters. That's a long and a lot of topics on running a campaign. Any questions? I know I didn't cover everything. Y'all just wanted to get out? Sir?
You talked about don't answer the question, talk around the question. So
you can answer my question.
With the election of Donald Trump, like, he answers everything, pretty much. And now you see Joe Biden having like slip-ups, saying things he probably shouldn't say to certain people. Do you think that's because he realizes that Trump will answer anything, and maybe people are starting to shift towards that? Like, they want answers, they don't want to hear you talk around the same thing over and over and give the same generic answer?
Yes. Senator, let me digress. I have a tendency to tell the truth a little too much. Directly, I should say. President Trump came in at a great time in presidential politics, because our country was ripe with an electorate that was very receptive to somebody to finally stand up for me. And he capitalized on the rural parts of America. I label them Joe Sixpack, of people who said, no one will stand up for me. You always look out for the upper 1% or the bottom 20%. Nobody's never looking out for me. And, you know, we can't say that because it's politically incorrect. You can't say this because national media says you can't say it, or we'll get in trouble saying this. And all of a sudden, here comes this guy who bellies up to the presidential debate, and he starts saying things, and he didn't care. You know, and he starts calling, you know, Jeb Bush, Jebby, little Jeb, and, you know, he does it just to get under their skin, and extremely smart. I remember the governor and I had a conversation with him in a living room one time, and we were talking immigration, and the governor and I walked away and we're like, and he's pretty sharp. I didn't think he was that sharp leading into the conversation. I didn't know him. It was all perception. he's very political astute. But here's this guy that says what he thinks ought to be said, and here's this electorate out here that all of a sudden no one in their mind had said anything for them. And boy, he tapped into that. The first person to tap into it was Sarah Palin, a popular candidate. And the governor and I read this book and kind of dove into this. It was a great book. But they claim that Sarah Palin came along with McCain and really tapped into this movement. And then Donald Trump saw this and just completely just drilled in it. But here's this movement that Donald Trump tapped into and became Trumpeters. And I mean, this is hardcore people. And all of a sudden, he's talking for them. Then you got Senator Biden over here. Senator Biden is one of the nicest people you'll meet. Man, he will say things, and you're like, you can't say that. But he doesn't say it for the same reason as Trump. He says it because he just thinks it's okay to say. You know, no, you can't say that. He's going to goof up. He can't help it. I mean, he's going to say something, and like yesterday when he got in the argument in Michigan with the auto worker about Second Amendment. Let that go, man. The staff should have pulled him back.
But she tried, and he was like, no, I got this, and like shushed her.
Yeah, I mean, that's when he just got, that's too extreme. But he says it because he just makes natural mistakes. The president says it because he's being acutely aware of exactly what he's doing, and he's tapping into a movement that can be dangerous, but yet he knows exactly what he's doing. I hope that answers your question. Yes, sir?
What about endorsements?
Endorsements matter. The governor and I covered several endorsements about an hour ago that I get requests for that people feel like that he's out of office, but he's extremely popular. He's still, polling in the upper 70s, low 80s in terms of popularism around the state. That's because we don't have to make decisions. And so he's very popular. So people think, oh, if I get Nathan Deal on my ticket, I'm going to coast to victory. No, that's not. You still have to work. You still have to have a message. You still have to have a plan. You have to have money. And you have to have a base. Yes, it's nice to have endorsements. Endorsements to me are a good, like a second or a good sleeping tool that I go to bed at night going, these people really think a lot of me, that they think I'm going to win. And even Nathan Deal thinks I'm going to win, and it makes you feel good. But it's not what is going to get you elected. And it's not what's going to get you beat either.
It's just something that's extra, like the parts that you mentioned, they're more of the mechanisms to move your campaign forward.
It shows, let me give you another example. I'm sorry for giving you all these examples, getting in the weeds, I guess I should say. 2 weeks ago, the governor endorsed Kevin Tanner for his state representative, Kevin Tanner, for Congress. The 9th District Congress, of which we reside in here, is currently up. The early endorsement of Kevin Tanner was done, we did so strategically. And I say that because we wanted to get in early to show that Hall County, which is the base of the 9th District, was soundly behind Kevin Tanner. And was the group of people that had gotten behind Kevin was firmly with Kevin. And we wanted to kind of lock people up, meaning politically we wanted to lock them out. Don't worry about getting behind somebody else. You need to get with Kevin. Don't worry, don't think about getting in this race. Don't qualify. This is a good man. He's going to be the candidate. And that was a strategic endorsement at an early time, but done so for the sole fact of locking the district. And all I wanted to do there was show the district that we are behind this candidate. Don't think about getting in. Here's our people and here's our structure. We're behind this candidate. If you want to get in, come on in. The water's warm. But, that was a strategic decision on endorsement. But that doesn't mean Kevin Tanner's going to win. By no means. Kevin's got to raise money. He's got to work. He's got to have a message. All that was attempt to do was to strategically lock down the district to keep other people out and to lock up Hall County to try to get the financial support for Hall County behind Kevin? Good question. Sir?
How do you respond to the media that doesn't reflect something that you actually said?
Ignore it.
To just not poke at it.
Don't poke at it. Don't take the bait. They want you to take the bait. Bluestein's the worst about this with AJC. I mean, he knew I didn't want the governor to take the bait, and so he'd always circle back, either when I wasn't around, or he'd circle back and ask, and then he'd ask a different way, and and he'd ask an easy softball question to get the governor all, in a good mood, and then he'd say, well, I know you want to talk about this, but what about this? And try to slip it in, because he knows the governor's a good man and is going to try to answer every question. But they know, and this gets in the newspaper, this gets under their skins, which I love doing. What's the number one job of a newspaper?
Get people to read.
Sell newspapers. They don't write their headlines. They don't want to tell you this. The headlines are written in Ohio. Think about that. The AJC headlines are written in Ohio. And whenever we'd call and complain, they'd say, oh, our editors did that. Oh, well, that's written in Ohio. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Ohio? The number one job of a newspaper is to make money. And the way you make money is you sell newspapers. And the way you sell newspapers is you have headlines that get eyeballs on the article, whether that's done electronically, digitally, or print. If I'm walking in Atlanta Hartsfield and I go by the AJC and I see deal raids or rainy day fund, I'm going to stop and look at it. I want to know what why the rainy day fund was raided, even though it wasn't. I made that up. But, that's the salacious headline that the press might or might not do just to bend it just a tad, just get you to buy the newspaper, read the article, click on it. Eyeballs to click. What do you call that? Clickbait? I'm not hip, but I think that's what my 17-year-old says. Oh, you took the clickbait. So that's...
Chris, you might also tell them that that's why sometimes the headlines don't correspond with the article that they're on top of, because they're written by different people.
Oh, yeah. I always love to look at who wrote the article, because I know who wrote the article had nothing to do with the headline. And then if I know who wrote the article, I know exactly if they wrote the article. Look at the article, and then look at the bottom of the article, and see if there's another person that was added to the bottom of the article. If there's another contributed to the article, the contributor to the article wrote the article. The guy or girl up here is just more senior. That's another little trick they don't want you to know. But when you've been on the front page so many times, you learn these little tricks, and not in a good way. But politics are fun. Don't get me wrong. Politics, I've got kind of a unique story. I don't know if unique or strange or weird. I told my sister graduated college in 3.5 years. I remember sitting at Sunday lunch after church, and my parents looked at me, and I said, 5 years. I was a senior in high school, but I knew going in, I was like, there's no way I'm going to do 3.5 years. Are you kidding? So I was in my fifth fall, and at Georgia Southern, and I wanted to be a CIA agent. I took 4 years of Arabic in college. I can't speak it now, so don't ask me. And then I realized that being a ginger in the desert wasn't a good thing. So, that was my goal, and that or a Secret Service agent. Then all of a sudden, my father asked me to come home and help with the campaign in 1992. I knew how to dig a hole because I built fences during the summers. And so I could dig a hole and put and then I got to talking to property owners about politics, and I loved it. And man, it just got in my blood, and I just loved politics. And we went to Washington, and I had a blast and just kind of stuck with it. So politics can be addictive. you can't put your toe in it and say, I'm out. You either get in it or you get out of it. But it's a ton of fun, and really helping someone, I can't tell you in more of a strong way, helping a candidate that you believe in, that's a friend, family member, or someone that you heard speak and you're like, I want to help that person. Helping their candidacy get elected is one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do in your career. Not for money, but just trying to help them get elected, whether it's county commission, whether it's clerk, whether it's state senate, house, whatever. It's just something that I would encourage each of you to do at least one time in your life, and run for office. All right, any more questions I'm sorry?
Since you know like the ins and outs of running a successful campaign, did you ever have the desire to become a candidate yourself?
That's a great question, and I have and have not. There are days I wake up and yes, but after 27 years and working very close with the governor, I've seen behind the curtain a lot, and there wasn't a curtain I didn't see behind. There wasn't really a strong inkling to put my name on the ballot. Being out of office now for a year and a half or a year or so, there's a strong, we would have done that different. And whether that means I'll run for office one day or not, I can't answer that. But we'll see, I guess is a short answer. But probably not at the federal level. I had people ask me about Congress this year, and I just don't have an interest to go back to Washington. You literally spin your wheels and not get a lot done. And we would do more in a morning down at the state capitol and at the governor's office than we would do in a month in Washington. I mean, it's just night and day difference. It's a perfect segue into the governor's office. The governor's office, how many people know after 2 months now, 3 months, 2.5 months with Governor Deal teaching, how many know pretty much have a good understanding of what the governor's office does? I'll admit, when I went there, I knew where the bathroom was because it was in between my office and his office. That first day, and we had snow and ice, canceled the inauguration, and so my first act was going to the governor saying we need to close state government. That's a big decision, by the way. Your first act, he looks at you and goes, "What?" He didn't say what, but yeah. But how many have a pretty good understanding of what the governor's office of the state of Georgia does and how powerful it is due to our Constitution? Pretty good understanding?
Somewhat for the class, yeah.
Okay. Good answer. Leader of the state, all state agency heads report through the governor's office, minus the constitutional elected ones. Constitutional elected offices being Department of Ag, Insurance Commissioner, AG, Labor, Public Service Commission, the 5 members there don't report to the governor's office. All others report straight through to the governor's office, all agency heads. The only difference that do not, the USG reports to the chancellor through your president, but the governor appoints this 19-member board of the regents that the chancellor reports to. The chief of staff's role is really the coordinated approach of implementing the governor's vision and management of state government on a day-to-day basis, 24/7, 365 days a year. There are times that on Christmas Eve I was in the governor's office on the phone with the governor. There were times at Christmas Eve I was with the governor. There are times when 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the governor and I, it's something that good friends of mine would say, "What's it like?" And I'd say, "Please just come sit outside my office and watch it evolve." I can tell you right now that the governor and his chief of staff in the state are absolutely overwhelmed with the management of the coronavirus and the protection of the state of Georgia. And I use the word overwhelmed, being it's consuming their entire day. Not overwhelmed as not being able to control it. I think that they are doing an excellent job of being transparent and getting the word out to the state of what they're doing and how to protect the state in terms of the coronavirus. If you watched any of the shows this weekend, you saw that the president had 3 cabinet members come out and say 3 different things than what he was saying. My head would have spun around and I would have gone crazy if that would happen at the state level under our administration. That's a no-no. Everything flows from your agency heads through your chief of staff to your governor. Everything from the public perception. Everything that in terms of a national or Georgia crisis, state crisis, local, everything that comes out from who? The governor. The governor's the leader of the state. He's the point person. Now, you have partnerships. You have partnerships with the legislature. The constitutional responsibility of the legislature is to do what? Make laws, and what's the number one thing they do every year? Pass the budget. Fund state government. So, the annual things that the governor does every year, these are things that no matter what, this is what we're going to do every year that the governor's office will do. Prepare a budget. The state. Handle the legislature. Conference the budget with the legislature. Bill signings. Commencement speeches. Valedictorian day. Bond sale. Fiscal year end. And then budget hearings in the fall that start all over again. What do you think bond sales are?
Like if you're trying to have a building that you want to build, let's just say, you need to sell these bonds to the public so that the money comes in, get the money to build the project.
That's right. On average, each year we have $1.1 to $1.2 billion in bonds. We're one of 9 states that has a AAA bond rating from the 3 bond rating agencies in the nation. We control the market each day that we sell the bonds. People want our paper. The governor controls the bond sale, and the governor meets annually with the bond rating agencies to answer any and all questions that they have on behalf of the state of Georgia in terms of our fiscal management. It's a big deal to be the AAA rated state in the nation, and it's one that we took and the current administration takes very, very seriously. Fiscal year end. Fiscal year end can be a little tricky. Fiscal year end comes to the end of the year. This is when the money left over in the budget that was budgeted, used hopefully on a conservative value, is placed into the rainy day fund. We call this the RSR. When we came in, I told you it was $116 million. When we left office, it was $2.5 billion. So Governor Kemp's first term, he put a little over $500 million in, so now there's close to $3 billion in the rainy day fund. Hopefully we won't have to tap into it with the coronavirus, any kind of downturn, but just in case we do, it's there. So there's $3 billion, we left it with $2.5 billion in the rainy day fund. Budget conference. This will start pretty soon with the legislature. And I'm just hitting some of the highlights here with some of these annual to-do things. This is something that the legislative and the governor's office will conference on the budget. The budget is prepared and presented by the governor on as mandated by the Constitution to be presented to the legislature on the Friday after the convening of the General Assembly on the Monday of. So the governor presents a recommended budget of an amended budget and a full fiscal year budget. Amended budget is adjustments to the current fiscal year you're in. The full fiscal year is the next fiscal year that starts July 1 through June 30th of the next fiscal year. So that recommended budget is taken by the House and Senate and passed and then conferenced and signed into law by the governor. You just saw yesterday the House passed its version of FY21. It is distinctively different than the governor's recommended budget. The Senate will now take the fiscal year 21 budget, put its changes on it, and then they'll conference on that and be signed into law before April 2nd. April 2nd, for those of you who are following the legislature, is sine die, is when they'll get out of town. State of the state. Nathan Deal loves writing his own speeches. The governor gives at least 1 to 5 speeches a week. Nathan Deal could not write his 1 to 5 speeches every week. So it was a compromise between his chief of staff and the governor that he would only get to write 3 speeches a year. He might get write a little bit more during commencements because he wanted to write his commencement speeches. So Nathan Deal wrote his State of the State speeches, and he wrote his what's called Eggs and Issues speeches, which is the Georgia Chamber. And he wrote both inaugural speeches. So every year, that's something that was very important to the governor, is writing his own speeches. And so he was able to write his own speeches without any staff assistance on those. We got to listen and make recommendations, and edits were applicable, but those were some of his best works. And so those were annual to-do items. Then I talked about some of the need-to-do items the governor does. The governor would take anywhere from 3 to 4 economic development trips globally. You heard Pat talk about that last week. And so he would go around the globe in search of jobs. And so he was very successful in doing so. We were able to bring over 817,000 new private sector jobs over the 8-year term during the Deal administration. So the governor, Ms. Deal, traveled a lot. These are things that have to be done during the administration. And then we also have to pay attention to what Chris talked about last week, which is in-state expansion. There's a lot of legislative contact. In order to have good relationships with the partnership you have with the legislature, you have to have legislator relationships. Let's say that a few times. So whenever the governor would travel into their districts, this is very minutia. But you'd be surprised how many times my rear end has been removed from me by not alerting these people. They want to be told beforehand that the governor's coming. Matter of fact, they would love to meet him at the airport or the county line to jump in the car with him. Because why? They want the press to see him and the people see them getting out of the car with the governor when he gets to the place of which he's going to speak. It's a big deal, and it's little effort on our part to make that happen. And if you can make that happen, they really appreciate that. So that's something we did throughout the year, and then also throughout the state, we'd always try to get around. We'd do civic speeches. There was always legal proceedings that had to be done every day. The governor and myself got sued every day. And the first month was kind of rough because I didn't know what I did to get sued every day. But then you just get sued every day. And so it's just a fact of life. We didn't do anything. It's just people suing the state. And so our lawyers stayed very busy. And it's just all the different state agencies and whatnot. The agencies never got sued. The governor got sued. We also worked hand in hand with our agencies and their implementation of activities around the state. So we'd always have the governor intervene or involved in their activities with their initiatives and things that he wanted to have a direct hand in. And so he traveled the state and did that quite often. Some of the things that popped up during the governor's time in office that you can't really, dictate is we had 23 natural disasters. So 23 times we had either ice storms, snowstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, power outages of some sort, of which GEMA took the lead, and the governor declared a state of emergency, and we had natural disasters that had to be managed and ran out of the governor's office with coordination with GEMA. That's something that you're seeing now with Governor Kemp and coronavirus, but it was something that Governor Deal did, and we did that 23 times during the 8-year period.
Tell them what GEMA stands for.
GEMA stands for the Georgia Emergency Management Agency. It's the state equivalent to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So they're the first people you see when any kind of natural disaster occurs, and they're the first boots on the ground in coordination with the National Guard, the Coordinating Council of GEMA, Department of Public Safety, our troopers, National Guard, Department of Public Health, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Agriculture, some of our more day-to-day necessity agencies in the Department of Community Health that we have to have that would be around the table when looking at the public safety of the state of Georgia. We had a couple special sessions during the administration. We had one that was called to do redistricting, which you'll see next summer by Governor Kemp. That's done every 10 years. And then we had one after Hurricane Michael came through that we had to do an economic initiative package to go in and do some stopgap measures for our agriculture community down in southwest Georgia, because having been in the federal level, the governor knew that it was going to take some time for federal relief to get there, and having been proved correctly, it took a little over a year and a half for that aid effort to actually arrive to our farmers. So it was a good thing that we actually did the special session. Some of the things that, looking back, that I'm most proud of over the 8 years would be what I've already mentioned a couple, is 817,000 new private sector jobs. Hope reform. Hope's kind of this third rail of Georgia politics. You don't talk about it because, man, you talk about it, do something about it, and you kill it, you might as well just leave the state politically because you be dead. Criminal justice reform. This was all the governor. The governor started this on his own in the beginning, and he led the effort. My concern early on was politically, and once I got past my hard head politically on it and wrapped my mind around that we could do something politically around it and still do what he wanted to do, I was good. I had a lot of heartburn in the beginning because I thought, like most conservatives, that it's weak on crime, but you have to look at it from a different angle, and the different angle is you're actually saving money through saving lives. Because my whole point, I always throw this in, we're talking about hardening prisons. When I say hardening prisons, we're not talking about taking people who are in prison and out of prison because of a hardened crime, violent offenders. Criminal justice reform under Governor Nathan Deal is taking a non-violent offender that has no business being in jail and putting them in an alternative court sentencing and actually rehabilitating them through a system that is a proven working model, and making them a model citizen and actually contributing to our society versus being in a prison where we're paying for them. That is a proven model that worked. That's a proven model that works across the nation, and one that we should be very proud of. 28% reduction in African American incarceration. It's just a huge savings. Economic impact, not an economic drain, an economic impact to the state, a little over $30 million annually. That's the people that were in prison that are now out contributing to society. So that is one of our greatest accomplishments I think you'll see in the state for several generations to come. Capitol grounds. This is one thing that's very, very boring. I mean, very boring. So if you look at the state Capitol grounds when we first got there in 2011 and look at it now, you'll see a totally different Capitol. You'll see where we tore down a parking deck. You'll see where we actually tore down and built a plaza. You'll see a historical museum that is going up. You'll see a archives building that was destroyed, and you'll see a new judicial center. So if you ever go back to Google Earth and just go from 2010 through 2018, just look at the Capitol grounds and do that. That's something that happened during the Deal administration, and that's one thing that I had the opportunity to work with Steve Stansel at GBA and the governor that I drive up every day or when I'm down there and really take pride in how it looks now versus how it looked when we got there. I mentioned earlier the partnerships with the legislature, the rainy day fund. The budget proceedings to me were kind of interesting and fun because I didn't know that much about it, and I learned a lot about it after 8 years of being the lead negotiator with Teresa, who you'll hear from next week. And then the one thing that really that I take a lot of pride in is this. You've got a $28 billion budget, $28 billion. And the governor recommends the budget. It goes to the House, it goes to the Senate, it comes back in a conference. During the Dill administration, over 8 years, on average, from the time that the budget was presented until the time that the budget was signed in conference, out of a $28 billion budget, less than 1% was ever changed. So that's something that I take great pride in, and with Teresa, who we worked very closely together and worked with Chairman England and Chairman Hill, not only during the legislature, but during the year as a partner in the budget instead of adversaries. And I think that speaks volumes with that statistic as to how that relationship bear the fruits of a non-confrontational partnership of working together. So the governor also wanted me to mention, I'll mention very quickly, my living arrangements in Atlanta. As I mentioned, it's 365 days a year because you got this phone attached to you. And then I attached a phone to senior staff, and I attached a phone to all the agency heads. So I had contact with those guys too. But the first few years I commuted, and I'd leave the house about 5 in the morning. I'd get home 7 or 8 o'clock at night. That got old, and my blood pressure went up quite a lot. And so, and Georgia State Patrol would blink their lights at me a lot. But during the session, I would stay at the mansion. And that's a funny story too. Because the first year in 2011, I didn't have a place to stay, so I went to this hotel near Turner Field. And the governor says, "Where are you going to stay?" And I said, "I got a hotel room." And he said, "Okay." So I went and got this hotel room, and I didn't have a hotel room when I talked to him, but I got a hotel room. And it was near Turner Field. I'm going to tell you which one it is because you might stay there, and but don't. And so I go there, and the first night, there's this banging on the door, you know, across the hall, and I'm like, what's going on? And, you know, just a lot of banging, loud noise. And so I come in the next day, and the governor says, "Well, where'd you stay?" And I told him. He goes, "Well, how was it?" And I said, "It's fine. It's good." So the next night, I go there, and, you know, I'm like, okay, so man, this might work out. Because when I went to D.C., I worked out an arrangement with the manager, like, look, I'll come every 3rd week. I'm going to be here. Can I get a fixed rate? Blah, blah, blah. And the manager at this hotel in Washington was like, "Sure, great, no problem." So it worked fine. I was kind of thinking I'll do the same thing in Atlanta during the legislature. So that second night, man, somebody took a crowbar to the door across the hall, and they were trying to break in. And I'm sitting there looking through that little peephole, and I'm trying to, you know, I'm sitting there thinking about trying to call Dog, and Dog's our executive detail, who's 6'4", trooper, and, you know, I'm like, no, I'm not going to call him. He'll get me. I'll get in trouble. And I was like, how am I going to get through this night? You know, because it was bad. So I go in the next day, and he said, the governor goes, "How was your night?" And I said, "It was not good." And he says, "What happened?" I said, "Somebody tried to break in across the hall." And he goes, "That's it. I'll see you at the mansion tonight." And I said, "Yes, sir." So the first 4 years, I stayed at the mansion during the session, and so it worked out great because we didn't get a chance to talk during the day. He was always doing gubernatorial things, you know, taking pictures and meetings, and I was doing everything in the back office with staff and meetings. So it worked out perfect because we got a chance to talk at night, and we'd spend that time talking at night and determining the direction. So it was great. It actually, you know, everything has a plan, not by us, but a higher calling. And so that worked out perfect. And Miss Deal loved it because she was in the room listening to everything, and she knew what was going on. We still got in trouble for not telling her things, but, you know, I stayed in trouble anyway. The second part of we got reelected, and so I bought this RV, and I tried to write it off my income tax because my boys are now 17 and 14, so I was going deer hunting, and we rent some property in Alabama, and I told my accountant, I said, "Well, I'm writing this off my income tax," and he goes, "What do you do with it?" I said, "Well, the boys and I go deer hunting in it," and he goes, negative. And I said, "What if I lived in it?" And so he said, "Well, yeah." So the second term, I don't know if you know it, but when you go downtown the Capitol, you see the white smokestack with, it says Corey on it. Well, Billy Corey's a good friend, and so Billy let me lease the parking lot. So I pulled my RV down to the parking lot next to the Capitol. And don't get me wrong, it had two gates, and you had to have the gate. It was fenced in, had two gates, and I put it under the MARTA train. And so for 3.5 years, I lived in the parking lot at the Corey Center in my RV. I was 35 seconds away from the Capitol, which I loved. The Georgia State athletic director gave me a key to the football locker room, so I worked out every night. I swam at Georgia State because I do Ironman competitions once a year, and so I was having a blast. And once you get used to the train, you sleep well. Now, my wife came down and stayed a few times with me, and my sons came down, and they didn't sleep a wink at night, but I slept like a baby. But that was my living arrangement, and my doctor couldn't understand why my blood pressure was up here the first term and down here the second term. I said, it's called not commuting. But anyway, so that actually saved me, believe it or not. Sir?
My father did Ironmans. How in the world did you find the time to do that at the same time?
I'm hard-headed. Avery and the governor tell you I'm hard-headed. I'm disciplined, and I think those two are synonymous. But I get up in the morning and I run, swim. On the weekends I bike. I'll do 50 miles Saturday and Sunday. One in 2000, my first Ironman, I got ran off the road to distract a driver. I got 2 titanium collarbones. But it's just, you just do it. I just had to do, I mean, if not, the stress just overtakes you, and just from that job, it's just.
So that helps you out?
Oh, it was a great outlet. I'd go during lunch, if I didn't have a meeting or something, I'd leave the office, walk down to GSU, swim a mile, and come back. And I'd run in the morning for everybody got to the Capitol. So I got to the Capitol at 6. I'd run. Behind the governor's ceremonial office is a shower. I took my suit in with me, so I showered there. And then at night when I'd go home after I went and worked out, it kept you busy, kept you relaxed, and they'll probably tell you it kept me more of a nicer person in the office.
Chris, tell them about the story with the intern that went running with you. He wanted to go running with you.
The interns wanted. We always had great interns, and I would, if you would love to do something, go intern at the governor's office. Apply for it. It's a great opportunity. You'll love it. You'll get to meet some great people. And so we had an intern, and they wanted to run. This particular person wanted to run, and so I love people to run. And you run at your pace, I'll run at my pace, and you know, I'm old, but you know, this guy thought he thought he was a runner. And so we ran, and I thought I killed him for that first mile. And so I stopped, and we did. I usually run 4 miles, and then we did 2 miles that day. And I literally thought I killed him. And we came back, and he was just soaking wet. And Avery took pictures of us because he really wanted to post it on social media. And so he was the first and only intern that ever ran with me. After that. Sir.
What's your pace?
It used to be 7:35 to 7:38, and now I don't know what happened, but it's gone to like 8:05 to 8:04, and I'm trying to figure that out.
Is that for the marathon?
That's just working out. I mean, that's just daily. My pace at I was so proud this year because I ran the first 18 miles without stopping, and that was at 10-minute pace. And so and then finally, you know, I had to stop, and then I'm like, I got 4 miles left. I can do this. But yeah, it's just, but I don't know what's going on. I guess it's getting old. But my swimming's increased. My pace swimming, so I can't explain.
So obviously budget and criminal justice reform are important. Did you guys ever talk about the possibility of like commuting nonviolent drug offender sentences or legalizing marijuana to boost the taxation budget?
We talked about the legalization of marijuana very briefly. We actually gave a pathway to the House one year how to do that if they would have allowed the university system to grow it, and never for recreational use. But we gave a pathway to do it, to grow it, harvest it for medicinal purposes, but not for recreational. And they chose not to do it that year, and then they came back and you know, they're doing it now. So that to answer your question, yes, we did that one year. Sir?
Is it true that you hotwired your car during the snow apocalypse?
That's sort of true. Let me tell you the whole story behind that.
Here we go.
So it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're going back to the mansion because that's the only place we can get to get back from the Capitol. And there's Marta's got a short bus in the middle of one of those back roads. I forgot the name of the road we're on. So the governor's in the SUV, and the senior staff's in there. So I climbed through the window trying to, maybe I know how to do that, maybe I don't. So I'm in the window trying to start this bus. And I can't get the bus, the keys are gone, and unfortunately I couldn't get the bus started. And then, but I was able to get the bus in neutral, where we were able to push the bus enough out of the way where we could get around the bus. Had I had keys, I would have started that bus and moved it. So you were sort of true. Y'all have been a great audience. I think it's my time.
We've got about 1.5 minutes.
Y'all, I've got some great stories on the governor, and the experience. I commend you for taking this class. The experience you're getting is unbelievable. I always told myself, coming to work, you know, you stay 8 years or you stay 27 years. If you continue to learn something the next day that you didn't know before, and you can make a positive impact, then you always felt I had a calling to stay, and a need to stay. And so the ability of what you're learning in here from firsthand knowledge of really how state government worked and how decisions were made. And I don't know if he's talked to you about the veto of RFRA or the veto of the campus carry, and then coming back next year and how we worked with the legislature and got a campus carry bill that we signed. But those are some questions I hope you'll ask him, how he wrestled with RFRA and how he went back and pulled every court case and had us put together. You've got David Warner coming, one used to be the COO. David also pulled every court case for RFRA decision, going back to the peyote decision with the U.S. Supreme Court. And ask him about how he wrestled with that and how he applied it to the law to reach his decision on RFRA, and the economic impact of signing that law would have had at the time, not now, but at the time. And then talk to him about some of the heads of state that came in and met with him and some of the wild and crazy things they said. But just the unbelievable opportunity you have. But you've been a great group, and I've enjoyed visiting with you. When I visit on the side, I'll probably come back next Wednesday if I can with Teresa. She's such a super asset for y'all to hear from as well. But and then you're going to have a big class when Roy Barnes comes. There's a lot of people in Atlanta want to come up and hear that as well, because a lot of things. Here's a quick story. I know I'm going to run over by telling you this, but this speaks volumes for the Deal administration. We needed money to go. We needed federal money to really dig out, start digging out the Savannah harbor, because the Savannah port is so crucial. So we had to put $300 million in before the federal government put their $600-something million. They've lost. People tend to forget that now, but we put $300 million of our own money in first to start that dredging project. The way we got that was we started during the Obama administration, And Governor Deal and really, at the time, Mayor Reed went up together in the Obama administration. And Governor Deal and Mayor Reed went into the Secretary of Transportation's office, and it was Secretary Ray LaHood. We had served with Ray LaHood in Congress. He was a Republican who also was good friends with Obama at an Illinois delegation. But it was quite simple. He said, how can I say no to a Republican governor and a Democrat mayor who come up here together, and it's obviously real, the friendship. That's the kind of relationship building and the kind of administration the Deal administration carried forth. It wasn't who got the credit. It was, what do we need to do to make Georgia better than what we found it? And working, whether it was working across the aisle, whether it was working with whoever, but it was getting what needed to be done at the time. So ask him about some of those questions like that. He's got them up in there. You just got to pull them out. But thank you all very much. I enjoyed it.